slides also?
I'm ready.
Okay, cool, man.
Good afternoon. Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you for coming out today. Appreciate that. I'd like to call this meeting to order. This meeting is the afternoon session for the Goochland County Board of Supervisors meeting on April 3rd, 2018. We'd like to go ahead and begin this meeting as usual with our invocation and pledge. The invocation will be led by Pastor Kurt Krushwitz. How'd I do on that? Thank you. Pastor of the Goochland Baptist Church. And followed by the Pledge of Allegiance led by Supervisor Alvarez. So if you'll please rise as you're able, and Pastor, will you please come forward?
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. Let us pray. Almighty God, today is the day that you have made, and we will rejoice and be glad in it. We're grateful for the opportunity to be gathered here today, Lord, in your presence in our community. God, we pray that you would send your Spirit to guide the conversations and the decisions that will be made, that voices that need to be heard will be heard, that your wisdom will guide us in decisions that are being made, and that through it all, the common good would be advanced. We pray these things in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pastor. The next item on the agenda is the citizen comment period. The citizen comment period is a period where any citizen that wishes to come forward and address this group at the microphone on any item of Goochland County business, now would be the time to do so. I'll go ahead and open the citizen comment period. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close the citizen comment period. The next item on the agenda is the chairman's comments, and I had just a couple. We have just completed our town hall meetings, our spring town hall meetings. I just wanted to thank everyone who participated. It's one of our more important ways of collecting feedback from citizens on the Goochland County budget. Each spring we bring the budget out to each of the districts for comment and input by the engaged citizens. So I want to thank everybody that attended. This year we got a lot of feedback, a lot of which actually centered on public safety, particularly in our schools. And the school administration and the sheriff were on hand to share what is currently being done in our schools to make sure that our children are safe, but also some additional detail on steps, future steps that may or may not be taken to help ensure that our children are safe when they attend our schools. So again, I want to thank everyone for attending and all their meaningful feedback. The second thing I have is on our consent agenda today, we have a resolution, which I have here somewhere. We have a resolution on our consent agenda today that I just wanted to read into the record up front, and it celebrates and honors Dr. Martin Luther King. And I'll just go ahead and read the resolution now, and it'll be considered for adoption later on in this meeting. Whereas Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr., the transformational leader of the American Civil Rights Movement, changed our nation forever through his leadership, service, and clarity of vision. And whereas Dr. King devoted his life to strengthening the content of the American character and called on our nation to live up to its founding principles of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness for all its citizens, and whereas through his determination, spirit, and resolve, Dr. King helped lift souls and lead one of the greatest movements for equality and freedom in history. And whereas Dr. King sacrificed his life to spread a message of universal equality and justice that touched the soul of our nation, and for his efforts to end racial segregation and discrimination through civil disobedience, and other nonviolent means was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 1964. And whereas Goochland County wishes to honor the lasting legacy of this great American, remember the ideals for which he fought, and recommit ourselves to ensuring that our country's promise extends to all Americans across this great land. And whereas the Board of Supervisors encourages all Americans to celebrate his memory by performing acts of kindness through service to others. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the County Board that all citizens are encouraged to honor Dr. King by living out his teachings as we continue to work for the day when the dignity and humanity of every person is respected. Dr. King was an exceptional leader and who emphasized peaceful and nonviolent methods to accomplish change, and he did just that. So thank you for that indulgence. That concludes the chairman's comments for today. The next item on our agenda is expressions of interest to fill the vacancy on the board's District 3. This board has an obligation to fill a vacancy in District 3, and under the state code, we have until April 24th, I believe, to appoint an interim successor to that position who would serve in that role until the special election, which is scheduled for November 6th, 2018. This board has decided to engage on an open and transparent process to fill this vacancy and has solicited interest from all citizens. However, you must reside in District 3 to apply for that position. In formal applications, the cutoff for formal applications was actually due yesterday, but today, both at the 3 p.m. and the 7 p.m. sessions, we are opening up for expressions of interest to any citizen that would like to express their interest to this board in an open and public forum. So with that said, at this point, I will go ahead and open up a period of expression of interest for those residing in District 3 that have some interest in filling the vacancy. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close the expression of interest. The next item on the agenda is the county administrator comments. Mr. Badesky, do you have comments for the group?
Just a few this afternoon, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
I wanted to echo the comments you made about the town hall meetings. It's always a great opportunity for us to get out in a less formal structure to meet with our residents and get feedback. There has not been a meeting that we have not learned something from our residents that is value to our day-to-day processes. No one can say there's not citizen engagement in Goochland. Our residents are turning out in large numbers. I've been in larger communities, and I have not seen the turnout that Goochland has. And so that's something we should be proud of. There is engagement. Our residents definitely let us know their thoughts and perspectives, and we value that in our processes. I did want to share a date, and we will share this through our community relations functions through Mr. Drumright, but coming up on April 24th at 4 p.m., the Virginia Department of Transportation, Commonwealth Transportation Board will be conducting a meeting regarding the 6-year improvement program process. There are a number of projects that are critical to Goochland County that the Commonwealth Transportation Board hears. It is important to have representation both from the political standpoint, administrative standpoint, but from our residents at these meetings to make sure they hear Goochland's needs. So we would encourage participation from our residents there. And we will actually be producing some speaking points as well to assist with any comments. But we all know that there are troubling spots in our community that are less safe for our residents, and it's important for that message to get heard at the state level. The last thing I'd like to share, Mr. Chairman, if our local restaurants are seeing a decrease in business from county employees, it's only because we currently have a Biggest Loser program going on. That being said, everyone that's not on my team, I've provided your photos and a list of names to all the restaurants, and I will be providing desserts to those of you that do patronize those restaurants. But in the spirit of, I'm joking by the way, and just in the spirit of thinking about our employees and their overall wellness, we value their health and commitment to our community, and it's a program that HR and the team has put together, and so we really appreciate the support. But it's just another way that we recognize our employees contributing to their own health and ultimately the county. So just appreciate your indulgence on that. And with that, Mr. Chairman, that's all I have today.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Badesky. The next item on the agenda is the presentation of proclamations, and we have 3 proclamations that we're going to present today. And this may be a bit unusual, but with the board's occurrence and without objection, what I thought we might do is consider approving each of these, or these 3 resolutions as a group in advance of presenting them, so that we can go ahead and present them in a smoother manner. So without objection, I'll go ahead and entertain a motion on these 3 proclamations as a group.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the 3 proclamations in our board packet, number 2726, 2732, and 2727.
Okay, it's been moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
It's been moved and second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, nay? Any abstentions? Okay, it's unanimous. All 3 proclamations have been passed. And now we're going to share with the audience what we just passed. The first proclamation is to recognize, as a matter of fact, before I get started, these 3 proclamations today really kind of touched me a little bit here. We sometimes, as we live our daily lives, we lose sight of some of the tragic human conditions that occur in our community. And part of what these 3 resolutions will do is at least raise awareness and let people know what's going on out there in the community. And that's maybe a first step to try to address these issues as well. So the first proclamation is to recognize April 22nd to 28 as Hunger Awareness Week. Mr. Badesky, perhaps we could call the folks forward and read the resolution?
Yes. Anyone representing, please? Ms. Wiskewicz will read into the record the proclamation. Mr. Chairman, the proclamations.
Directing the pictures.
Thank you.
Whereas the United States Department of Agriculture defines food insecurity as limited or uncertain availability of nutritionally adequate and safe foods, or limited or uncertain ability to acquire acceptable foods in socially acceptable ways. And whereas food security is a basic human need that allows children and adults to learn, thrive, and remain healthy. And whereas a food desert is defined as an area where populations live more than 10 miles from a supermarket or large grocery store if in a rural area. Whereas Western Goochland has been declared a food desert by the Virginia Food Desert Task Force. And whereas an estimated 1,800 Goochland residents experienced food insecurity in 2017. And whereas Goochland's low-income citizens depend on public and private food resources to meet their nutritional needs. And whereas over 1,700 individuals, including nearly 500 children, were served by Goochland food pantries in 2017. Now therefore be it resolved in recognition and support of the important work being done by all Goochland County food pantries, that the Goochland County Board of Supervisors do hereby proclaim the week of April 22 to 28 as Hunger Awareness Week in Goochland, and urge all citizens to actively participate in a countywide food drive to support the numerous food pantries throughout Goochland and to work towards the vision of food security for all Goochland County residents.
Well, first of all, I want to thank these folks for all they do to try and help address the hunger in Goochland. I had no idea that parts of Goochland were designated as a food desert. Where folks are more than 10 miles away from subsistence, which is surprising. But again, this is to bring awareness to that fact, to let folks know there are hunger among us, and to do what we can to help out. And I really appreciate all the work that they've done to do that. Let's give them a round of applause.
Okay. Whereas preventing child abuse and neglect is a solution that requires involvement among people throughout the community, and whereas child maltreatment occurs when people find themselves in stressful situations without community resources and don't know how to cope, and whereas the majority of child abuse cases stem from situations and conditions that are preventable in an engaged and supportive community, and whereas all citizens should become involved in supporting families and raising their children in a safe, nurturing environment, and whereas effective child abuse prevention programs succeed because of partnerships created among social service agencies, schools, faith communities, civic organizations, law enforcement agencies, and the business community. And whereas during state fiscal year 2017, there were 55,258 children reported as possible victims of abuse or neglect, and 36,894 completed reports, which were accepted by Virginia's city and county departments of social services. There were 1,543 reports of substance-exposed newborns. Therefore, we, the Goochland County Board of Supervisors, do hereby proclaim April 2018 as Child Abuse Prevention Month and call upon all citizens, community agencies, faith groups, medical facilities, and businesses to increase their participation in our efforts to support families, thereby preventing child abuse and strengthening the communities in which we live.
Well, of course, child abuse is one of the most heinous things I could ever think of, and it's great to know that we have people out there focused every day to try and reduce and eliminate that tragedy, that human tragedy. But again, we're here to bring awareness to this. For those that didn't think it exists, it does. And thank these folks for everything they do to try to eradicate that tragedy. So how about a round of applause for these folks? National Crime Victims. These aren't national crime victims.
Whereas Americans are the victims of 20 million crimes each year affecting individuals and communities, whereas years of investment in crime victims' rights and services have developed a system of victim response that can help victims recover from crime, whereas reaching and serving all victims of crime is essential to supporting thriving communities because those who receive holistic services and support are more likely to remain invested in their communities, whereas dedicated victim service providers are working every day to meet the needs of crime victims, Yet there are still too many victims without meaningful access to rights and services, whereas many victims face barriers such as isolation, distrust of authorities, language limitations, lack of transportation, or cultural barriers that keep them from accessing the services and criminal justice systems that can help them recover from crime. Whereas we must make a dedicated effort to expand the circle of those prepared to respond to victims and link them to the resources that can help them recover. Whereas engaging a broader array of healthcare providers, community leaders, faith organizations, educators, and businesses can provide new links between victims and services that improve their safety, healing, and access to justice. Whereas National Crime Victims' Rights Week provides an opportunity to recommit ensuring that all victims of crime, especially those who are challenging to reach or serve, are afforded their rights and receive a trauma-informed response. And whereas the Goochland County Victim Witness Assistance Program is hereby dedicated to strengthening victims and survivors in the aftermath of crime, building resilience in our communities and our victim responders, and working for justice for all victims and survivors. Now therefore, the Goochland County Board of Supervisors do hereby proclaim the week of April 8 through 14 as Crime Victims' Rights Week, and reaffirm this county's commitment to creating a victim service and criminal justice response that assists all victims of crime during Crime Victims' Rights Week and throughout the year, and to express our sincere gratitude and appreciation for those community members, victim service providers, and criminal justice professionals who are committed to improving our response to all victims of crime so that they may find relevant assistance, support, justice, and peace.
You know, too often our criminal justice system focuses on just that, justice for criminals. And too often we forget about justice for the rights of the victims. This week is to commemorate the criminal victims' rights, not just the rights of the criminals. And so I want to thank you for all you do. Let's give them a round of applause. Now I'm going to ask the three groups that were just up here to reconvene for pictures of by the groups at one time. So perhaps first, the hunger awareness folks, followed by the child abuse, followed by you folks. And, actually, just like at a wedding, a photographer runs the show. Girls, come on up. And there we go. Did you get a band, Paul?
Squish in a little bit more. There we go. Okay, again 3. So here goes 1.
Great, thank you. All right, now let's see the third group.
Again, squeeze in. There we go. Very good. Go for 1.
See, we have a business meeting.
Yes.
Okay. I want to just thank everybody again for all their efforts to address those issues as they affect our community. The next item on the agenda is request to postpone agenda items, additions, deletions, or changes to the order of presentation. Board, do we have any suggested changes, additions, or deletions? Okay, seeing none, we'll move right ahead. Next item is the minutes approval. We have two sets of minutes from our February 27th meeting and our March 6th, 2018 meeting. We've all had a chance to review those in advance. Are there any suggested changes, additions, or deletions to the minutes? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the February 27th and March 6th, 2018 meeting minutes.
Okay, it's been moved. Do we have a second?
Second.
Moved and second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Any abstentions? Okay, the ayes have it. This meeting's minutes are approved. The next item is reports. First item is the VDOT report, and I believe Marshall Wynn will be delivering a report today. Marshall, welcome.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Mr. Badesky. Been on a sabbatical on the interstate for the past 3 months, so I've tried to stay engaged with what's happening in Goochland. So hopefully I'm back for a while.
Welcome back.
All right.
Normal maintenance activities through the past month, pothole patching, tree removal. We've had a couple of snow events, as you know. It's been a fairly heavy winter for small events, and we've spent quite a bit of money on snow this year, but that's fine. We're in good shape budget-wise. With the construction report, there's a couple of items on there might be of interest. One is the turn lane at Patterson and River Road. I met with Danny Baden and myself and a few folks from Project Management Group and looked at several different ways to install that intersection. Basically, we're going to try, and Danny can, let me know if I'm wrong or not, but we're going to try to do that with state forces to save a lot of money. The biggest cost is going to be utilities, so that's one of the items on the list. That's down the road a little ways, but in the near term, we've got 5 rural rustics. They're all listed. We've started on a couple of them in the county, just preliminary stuff. Some stone is being added to 1 or 2 of them right now. My plan is to have all 5 of those rural rustics completed by the end of our fiscal year, 1st of July, for the county. That's my plan right now, the way I'm working on it.
Wow.
We've got a couple other items that aren't listed on there, and I know 288 and 250 is a pretty hot item. We got a public hearing April 11th, and I'm sure y'all will be involved in that. See where that goes. And the West Creek Patterson light, I think that's slated for later this spring or early part of the summer. And they're going to do that project with an on-call contractor. I think what's going to happen, that on-call contractor is working on a flashing light in Hanover right now, and I think that contractor is probably going to move to West Creek after that. I wish I knew the exact schedule, but I can find that out from CRO and let y'all know at a later date.
Great.
So, other than that, y'all have any questions from me?
Questions for Mr. Wynn?
I do, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
Mr. Wynn, thank you. Welcome back. And thank you for the flashing light at Fairgrounds in 250.
Right.
I know you went through some hurdles to get that light. I don't know, I'll need to check with the sheriff to see if we've had any more accidents, but
I don't know, you can see it better at night than you can during the day.
yeah,
You know.
yeah, I don't even know if it flashes during the day.
It does.
It does.
It flashes during the day.
So the other question I had is, in the past, VDOT used to use prisoners for cleaning the roads. Some of the roads are in really bad shape, especially the roads that lead to convenience centers like Fairgrounds,
Okay.
Maidens, Whitehall. Are there any plans for cleanup in the near future, or?
I will give, the Oilville area headquarters has a crew that they pick up every day. And I will make sure they get those scheduled. They're supposed to, and previously they were supposed to pick up fairgrounds every couple of weeks, because that gets pretty well trashed, as you know. So, but yeah, I'll make a point to get with that crew and put those on top of the list for trash pickup.
Okay, I've gotten a few calls from citizens complaining about the trash.
Basically ran the convenience centers
Yeah,
and stuff?
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Thank you. Welcome back.
Yep, thank you and welcome back.
Okay.
And I believe Mr. McNabb would like to come forward and share some interesting developments with us.
Just for a minute. Good afternoon to Mr. Chairman and the members of the board. I just very quickly wanted to confirm to you that I will be retiring as resident engineer for Ashland Residency within the next couple of weeks. I want to assure you that the recruitment process is well underway, so my replacement will be named fairly soon, but there will be an interim period of time. And during that time, Marshall Wynn and Danny Baden will be filling in for my role as well as doing their own jobs. I also want to thank you for your cooperation the last 4 years while I've served in this position. I have certainly enjoyed it. I also want to thank you for providing the staff resources from county staff that help us do our job. I would particularly like to cite Tom Coleman. Tom has been a very big help to us. He serves you and serves the residents of the county very well, helps us to do a better job for the county residents. And finally, I want to wish all of you well, both individually and collectively. I don't have to tell you that Goochland has a lot of very good things going on, and it's been my pleasure to be a very small part of that, but I have enjoyed it. Thank you.
Well, Mr. McNabb, is that, are you requesting our permission to retire?
No, not really, not really. That's not in the fine print.
Well, of course, we absolutely want to thank you for all your efforts in representing Goochland County and all the things you've accomplished during your time, and wish you all the best in the future. Board, anyone else like to chime in? I think we'd like to wish you well and thank you for everything.
Thank you, I
And
appreciate it.
if you're requesting permission denied. But if you're not requesting permission, then we wish you very well. All the best.
Okay, I understand. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Okay, that was the VDOT report. The next item on the agenda is the introduction of new staff. Ms. Parrish, would like to come forward?
Good afternoon, Chairman, members of the
afternoon.
board, Mr. Badesky. I'm Kelly Parrish, Director of Human Resources, and on behalf of the county administration, I am pleased to introduce to you a new firefighter. Jordan, would you please stand up? Jordan Fisher began employment with the county on March 19th. He comes to us from the Capital Region Airport Commission, where he was a firefighter. Prior to that, Jordan worked at Johnson Willis Hospital as an emergency department technician. He volunteers with Powhatan Fire and Rescue and for the Boy Scouts of America, where he is an Eagle Scout. Please join me in welcoming Jordan.
Well, welcome.
And that concludes my report for today. Thank you.
Thank you for that report, Ms. Parrish. And welcome. Welcome to Goochland. Next item, I'm going to ask the county assessor to come forward. Oh, look, there she is already.
Yep.
Ms. Davis, thank you for coming forward and going to share a report with us.
Yes, I am. Good
Thank you.
afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Board, Mr. Badesky. I just want to give you a summary of this year's 2018 reassessment appeal stats. There were 15,028 reassessment notices sent to the property owners in January. Appeal period began January 12th through February the 15th. And during this time, we had 205 inquiries regarding the new assessments that were followed up with a response from the assessor and from my staff. And of the 205, 98 properties were given the value decrease, 10 properties were given the value increase, and 97 properties were unchanged. Now, the last paragraph, the updates of the appeals has changed since the writing of this. We have 9 appeals now, 8 of them being residential, 1 commercial, and there are 5 property owners. This number still could change as remaining landowners have until the end of April to appeal to the Board of Equalization. And the board plans to meet in June. So, any questions?
Any questions for Ms. Davis?
Okay,
No, just thank you for all you do. Appreciate it. Thank you for that report. Next item is Fire Rescue. Chief McKay, would you come forward?
Good afternoon, board members, Ms. McGee, Ms. Miskowitz, County Administrator Podesky. Wanted to take this opportunity to publicly thank the Creasy family. Mr. Creasy was a 30-year member of our organization. His wisdom, his leadership will certainly be missed by us in Fire Rescue. The reason I want to thank the family is they allowed us to participate in Mr. Creasy's services, to infuse some of our traditions within the fire rescue community into his services, and for that we'll be forever indebted to them, as well as Mr. Creasy for his leadership. As I was getting ready for Mr. Creasy's services, I started thinking about how many people we have lost within fire rescue in the last 4 months. In the last 4 months, we have lost over 225 years of service from members in our organization who are no longer with us. That's a huge amount of institutional knowledge, a huge amount of institutional knowledge. And I hope that's not the trend for the coming year, but unfortunately, we see a lot of our founding members and our people who are very active over the past decades are now leaving us, and it's very difficult to replace that institutional knowledge. Past weekend, we had some significant activity here within the county. Saturday, even though we have a burn ban in effect before 4 o'clock, we still had 2 significant incidents on Saturday. One was a incident up in the area where Goochland, Fluvanna, and Louisa all come together on the end of Cabin Road, which is a road that has very few residents on it. All the way at the end is a large undeveloped tract of land. We had a fire that occurred back in there. We could see the fire from the area, from the end of the road, but we couldn't get to it. We had no idea what the size of it was. We actually used a state police helicopter to give us some eyes in the air to tell us what direction we needed to go and the size of the fire. We had every brush truck from Goochland County there. We had 3 tankers, 2 engine companies, Louisa, Fluvanna, Hanover was filling our Fire Station 3, so we had a lot of mutual aid assistance on that. Just as we were clearing and getting that one under control, we had another fire for a tractor that had exploded in another very remote wooded area in the western end of the county, again off Whitehall Road. Again, most of our county resources were deployed to that, as well as on both of these incidents, state forestry assets were used as well. So we were tied up pretty well from Saturday noon time all the way to Saturday early afternoon on that. Gives me an opportunity to remind folks that the statewide burn ban bill is still in effect until the end of April. It goes from February 15th to April 30th every year, and that is, it prohibits any burning before 4 o'clock. So you're allowed to burn under certain conditions between 4 p.m. and midnight, and your fire has to be attended at all times. So both of these fires are not related to that, but we have had several instances of individuals not being respectful of the statewide burn ban in that. You just welcomed Mr. Fisher to the county family here. We still have some vacancies to fill. Our application pool is now at 49 people. That closed the other day, so on April 17th, we'll be administering the test for that. That's a dramatic decrease from the last time we advertised for openings. We had 84 applications that we received last time. We only received 49 this time. And as usual, we're in competition with many of the other surrounding localities to fill those positions. You've heard me in the past talk about the Virginia Fire Officers Academy and the Virginia Fire Chief Officers Academy, and how Goochland County is as small as we are. We've been very successful with getting individuals into those classes. Those are residency programs held on the campus of the University of Richmond. We, once again, this year have been successful in getting 2 individuals into the Fire Officers Academy and 1 individual into the Fire Chiefs Academy. Those are very competitive. There's only 40 slots for the Chiefs Academy statewide, and there's 80 slots statewide for the Fire Officers Academy. So once again, tiny little Goochland is very successful in getting represented at state leadership levels within the fire rescue community. We're working with the equine community. It's been a number of years since we did a barn safety class, and knock on wood, we don't have too many barn fires here in Goochland County, but some of our surrounding neighbors have had them, and some of them can be very dramatic. Some of these horses are worth an awful lot of money, not just from an economic standpoint, but also an emotional standpoint as well. So we're once again going to be working with the equine community on a barn safety class. Survivor Day is once again on the 21st of April, and I'll give this to Ms. Biscaywas to display somewheres here on campus. But you'll be seeing these brochures and flyers out there. We want to take the opportunity to give our residents the skills and knowledge that they need to survive any one of a variety of situations. So that's the 21st from 9 to noon at Company 1. I know Mr. Alvarez in the past has been in attendance. I think all of the board members have stopped by to wish our citizens well on that. You're certainly welcome to attend again that day on the 21st. The VCU Shining Night program that I spoke to about in the past, this is where VCU highlights a victim of a trauma and highlights their pre-hospital stay to the hospital stay into their recovery. Several years ago, 2 years ago, we were highlighted for a motorcycle accident on 250. This year, we've been chosen again to be highlighted. There's only one agency in the entire state that's highlighted. We were 2 years ago. We're getting it again this year on April 28th for a serious car accident that occurred out on Interstate 64. We were fortunate enough to get there quickly. This person suffered very serious burns. We got them to VCU. The family wanted the child it was a young child in my eyes, because I'm old, but they wanted to attend their college graduation. They were physically unable to manage that themselves. We were able to muster some volunteer resources and took them to their college graduation this year, and we're happy to be once again chosen by VCU to be highlighted for that. And if you're so interested in getting additional information, you can do the VCU Shining Night. Do Google search and you'll get some information about that. I'd like to say that we try to put ourselves out of business, and we do. Try very hard to put ourselves out of business, but we're not being real successful with that, unfortunately. Last year, for the past 12 months, not the last calendar year, for the past 12 months, we've had over 3,200 incidents within Goochland County, which is a dramatic increase. Since January of this year, our call volume has gone up over 30% compared to the first quarter of 2017. So the more development, the more things occur and change in Goochland County, the more call volume is going to increase and the more demand on our staff. So I'll be happy to take any questions that you may have.
Yeah, thank you, Chief. Questions for the Chief? No? Okay. Chief, I'd like to thank you again for all you do.
Thank you.
All right.
We can do it, we just say they're in the packet. Mr. Chairman, items number 5 and 6 on your agenda, we've included in your packet for your consideration the Planning and Development Activity Report as well as the Accounts Payable Report. Should you have any questions, staff's available to address.
Any questions on those two items? No? Okay, we'll keep moving.
Mr. Chairman, we'll now go over the consent agenda. For those residents that are less familiar with what the consent agenda is, it is actually an item on our agenda that basically covers items that this board has considered at prior meetings and also authorizes activities that would take place at future meetings. We do include certain contracts and recommendations in this section, but they have been shared with and reviewed with the board prior. First on our consent agenda, Mr. Chairman, you had read into the record the resolution celebrating and honoring the life of Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. The second item on our consent agenda today is an authorization to execute agreement between Goochland County and the Virginia Department of Game and Inland Fisheries. This agreement specifically authorizes in emergency situations for the Department of Game and Inland Fisheries to have access within our emergency communication centers to a conference room, and it's actually a backup to their backup. And so we work, as you heard the chief earlier, talk about some mutual aid and relationships we have. This is one of those relationships we have with one of those state agencies. It does not preclude, and we get priority use in that agreement. Item number 3 on your agenda is an authorization for myself to execute a contract with Barry Dunn, McNeil, and Parker LLC to provide project management services for the county's enterprise resource planning solution. A little bit of background on this particular item. The county is currently and has been for some time now in a review process to an RFP to implement a new software system for our financials and human resource functions for the county. This particular contract authorizes the project management to assist in that. We're doing a hybrid approach of staff support with Barry Dunn. Barry Dunn has done work with us prior as it related to the development of our RFP and evaluation of that. This particular contract, our board member Lachelette had asked me prior to meeting starting, just some clarification that if at a future meeting we do not award the actual ERP contract, are we bound to implement and support this particular contract? And I'll ask Ms. McGee just to clarify some language that you may want to consider in your motion.
The item that's before you is authorization to do a contract amendment, so it's not a brand-new contract. It was the proposals attached and some terms that amend our original contract. But because the actual contract that Barry Dunn would be administering has not yet been approved by you, I would simply have your motion to approve be contingent for this item on it being entered into when the county enters into a contract for the underlying services, the underlying financial system, and that's when the county administrator is authorized to then execute this contract. That way there's no doubt about when this one started and what should happen if next month you don't take the action that will be presented to you to authorize the financial services contract.
Okay, good, thank you.
Any other questions on that particular matter? Item number 4, this is actually a cleanup. We, in prior capital improvement plans for the county, had designated the project where the roundabout will occur at Sandy Hook and Fairgrounds Road as one project. We've actually broken that down into 3 projects. This line item actually breaks down the funding. The roundabout project itself is now fully funded by the Department of Transportation. We are partially funding the extension, which runs from the roundabout to basically behind Taylor's Exxon onto the county property. And then the third phase is our extension from there to Route 6. And so this just breaks out and clarifies the funding and cleans up that capital improvement project. The next item is authorization for myself to execute a special project service agreement, or excuse me, I'm sorry, I jumped over the item 2698, amendment to the capital improvement program through the appropriation of state grant funds. This particular project is a no strings attached. We've applied for a grant. There's no local match requirement for us to do improvements to supportive equipment at our 911 center. We applied for and received this grant. This is actually allowing us to accept and appropriate the funds for such project. Item number 6 is the authorization for myself to execute special project service agreements with CVWMA, who does our collection, transporting, and processing of waste for the county. This particular agreement is specific to used electronic equipment and yard waste processing services. It's probably worth noting that Ms. McGee has been very active in the review of these because of some concerns that were related to an earlier lawsuit on electronic equipment disposal. We believe that CVWMA has built in certain protections to avoid those issues from happening again, and that this is a separate and distinct agreement that would take care of those particular equipment. So at this time, we'd recommend adoption of these 2 agreements. Item number 7, this is a referral to the Planning Commission, so no action is truly being taken here by this board today. However, we're referring to the Planning Commission an amendment to the subdivision ordinance specifically around amending the zoning ordinance as it relates to multiple access points to a development. And this is primarily turning and access kinds of issues. And so that would be referred to the Planning Commission and come back to this board at a future meeting. The last item I have for you today on the consent agenda is a request to set public hearing. Again, we're not taking any action today. We'd actually be setting a public hearing for our next regular meeting. And this is based on, we received a letter of interest as it relates to purchase of the property that's on the corner of Fairgrounds Road and Sandy Hook that's really adjacent to the Arby's. We've used this parcel for parking for fireworks. We had received a proposal for that purchase at the at the appraised fair market value. As consistent with law, we have to have a public hearing to be able to surplus any county property. We are basically just asking for the board's permission to have such public hearing at your next regular meeting. Mr. Chairman, with that, that's all of the consent items for your consideration today.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Badesky. Questions on these items?
Mr. Chairman, so back on item 3, we are scheduled at this point to see the financial services contract at our May board meeting. I guess, Mr. Badesky, we didn't quite finish that conversation. Is there a reason to do this now? Could this wait possibly and do both of these in May?
I guess the question, what's the advantage of doing the amendment that's contingent on approval before the approval? I mean, is that?
Exactly. It's before we haven't approved it, I guess.
Right. I
If
don't
there's a
believe there's
reason.
any concern with your holding it till May. And
I would ask Ms. Horlacher to weigh in on that.
Just a
She's been
question.
closest.
Would you like to come forward, Ms. Harlacher, and enlighten us as to why it might make more sense to do the amendment?
We purposely brought it this month. We plan to bring it to you in May, the contract for the ERP system, because we wanted to begin some of the preliminary work prior to the project kicking off, forming our governance, talking about some procedural changes in terms of our processes, looking at our processes, getting the committees formed. So that was the reason for starting it now. And it is a time and materials contract, so we will only ever pay for whatever we use. We are completed negotiations, and the contract will come to you in May. We're certain of that. Of course, if the contract isn't approved, then, everything would cease at that point, and we would only be charged for whatever work they've done in the meantime. But we were hoping to ramp up a little bit, so to speak.
Ms. Horlacher, just for clarification, you would prefer approval not with the contingency on the
Correct.
other basis for
Correct.
those reasons?
Because it is a time and materials contract, too, that only the work that they did in the meantime, in the next several weeks, realistically, it's only a couple weeks, but it would give us, we feel, a slight advantage to get started on the process. It won't be the end of the world if we wait until May, but.
So, again, what's before us now is an amendment that's contingent on the approval of the underlying
Not
contract
yet.
or independent?
Not yet.
no, right now you just have the contract before
Not
you
yet.
as an amendment.
We haven't made any motion on contingency.
There is no motion on
Right,
contingency.
there's been no motion yet, but with the
Right.
presentation, what we're being asked to consider, I guess, is,
Ms. Horlacher and I didn't have a chance to discuss that aspect of it. She is accurate that this is a times and material contract. So since there is something she would like them to get started doing, a task that she would find of value regardless of when the next contract gets entered into, certainly if you authorize it to be signed as it has been presented to you, to be signed and immediately effective, the only thing the county would be on the hook for is only the work that she asks Barry Dunn to do between now and whenever the next contract is approved.
Okay, so this would not be contingent on taking action in May? This would stand alone?
Right. Again, I didn't have the chance to talk to Ms. Horlacher before, and what it is she wants, there's some work that she would like this contractor to do that will allow them to get in a better place to start in on the contract with the financial services module. Though you would authorize this contract today, all it has in it is the prices services that we can request and what price they will be provided at. Should she enter into this contract today and they spend the next several weeks doing that work, and then for whatever reason, no contract is entered into, she simply stops asking for additional services. And then the county doesn't end up paying for anything more than it has actually used. Of course, in the regular course, we believe that you may approve the other contract and move forward. And so Ms. Horlacher is asking to be able to engage now so that she has some services prior to the other contract being entered into.
Mr. Alvarez, did you have?
No, I think I guess what I was going to ask is, can this work with Barry Dunn be done under the current contract?
And actually, we do have a little bit of a leeway on that. We have not spent all the money that we had originally.
But it's a different scope of work, perhaps?
It's slightly different. Do you think we could start the project work on the current project? Or you don't think so?
I think my biggest fear was that when we get started into the implementation process and the new project, and we would have to stop. We wanted it to be a seamless contract and a seamless transition. So that was basically, we have a little money left. I haven't seen an invoice lately from Gary Dunn, but it's my recommendation that we move forward because it's a time and material contract, and that's the way we wrote it.
So the previous contract will end when we start this new contract?
I'm sorry?
The previous contract, the current contract will end when we start this one, because it's a...
And actually, it's going to be concurrent. It's going to run right on through to the amended contract.
Is it?
So, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
So my question is this. I think it's probably likely that we'll approve the contract in May. However, any money that we spend in April, if we do not approve that contract, that's just money thrown away, right?
Well, assuming that we will eventually do a project, it's
Sometime,
not
somewhere.
thrown away. I mean, then we're just getting roles defined. We're starting to talk about the preliminary things that we may want to change some of our processes. Assuming that we will do a contract at some point, it wouldn't be wasted.
And so this amount of time, excuse me, Mr. Chairman, so this amount of time in April is so critical that we can't wait till May?
It's not absolutely critical. It just gives us, like I said, it just gives us kind of a jump start. I mean, it depends on
It's like any project. If we put it off for 30 days, we're 30 days further behind. They're trying to be in a position to have that preparation work done that would avoid that 30-day period of time. And the work itself it's not a lost expense or a lost investment. We will use that whether we enter into this contract or enter into one 6 months from now with another vendor.
Right.
So, I guess it provides for some continuity from the phase where we identify the vendor to the start of the project to implement.
About how much money are we talking here? We have ballpark or range or?
I don't,
For this amendment?
Yeah.
not,
Well,
no,
for the month of
it's just
April.
the work
For
in
the next 30
April.
days.
Oh.
Just the work in April, it would hard, I
I
can't.
didn't ask them for a proposal on what it's going to take to kick off the meeting, to kick off the implementation. I was really fearful that we would lose the momentum. Barry Dunn has proven to be experts in their fields of implementations on new ERPs. They have implemented multiple ERPs with other localities. This has been a probably 18-month project so far, doing the RFQ process, going through the demos and the selection. We feel very comfortable that the award in May will be, and we feel like we just don't want to lose that momentum. We're very done.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think it's going to be a small amount. If you'd like to know the cost on that, again, right now we're running a little bit under the current contract. Our current contract is running out. I didn't check those numbers before we came to see where we were, but.
Okay.
If you look at the contract for the term that we're recommending, you're probably no more than $10,000 for a month of service.
I would say at the most, yes.
Okay, so less than 10,000.
And again, it's not a lost investment.
It's really out of order. We're putting the cart before the horse, it seems like to me, because we haven't approved the contract.
But just to clarify, this would be an amendment of the existing contract, not an amendment of the,
For work,
The May
assuming
contract.
we're gonna approve the contract, which we haven't done yet.
A contract?
But the contract that
Yeah.
we'll be looking at in May
Right.
is
We
a
haven't
different
looked at it
contract,
yet.
right? It's a contract for the software.
Right.
So we're just extending
Prepping
the
for the
contract for
software.
somebody to help us implement the
Right.
software.
Correct, correct.
And that, I mean, to me, that's not uncommon in this area, to have your partner that's going to help you implement engaged before you, well, they've helped us make the selection.
Correct.
So now it will be a matter of helping us transition into the execution or the preliminary phase.
Exactly.
So it's common to enter into another contract before we decide, pick the software vendor? Is that what you're saying?
What I'm saying is, it's common, if you bring in a partner to help you identify the software, to continue that contract to help you with the implementation. Now, obviously, in this case, we haven't,
We haven't done anything to implement yet.
no, exactly, but this type of work is, no matter what software you implement, you want to identify your stakeholders, your, I guess your goals, what are you going to be implementing, which, some of that's already been done, right?
Right.
So-
Right, but we need to, like you say, set up a steering committee
Right.
who are going to be your super users, identify blackout dates, start to get a timeline, those kinds of things.
And we are down to, we have basically one choice, right, for software.
We are negotiating with a vendor, yes. Negotiations are almost done.
So this amendment, would it be appropriate to characterize this as a non-vendor specific amendment, and that the amendment would help us prepare for whoever the ultimate
Correct.
vendor is?
Correct.
So this is not contingent necessarily on approving Dunn as the provider? This is,
No, it's
is
not
that?
Dunn.
Or another company.
No, it's not done.
Or
It's
any,
the
any
software.
company,
Yeah.
Correct.
the
Right.
software provider?
They do have experience working with the company that we believe will become the ultimate software vendor, but they have experience working with local governments and other software also.
So almost, it's not tied necessarily inextricably to the decision we make in May. This would, I guess, Mr. Badesky, we referred to, this would not be money lost if we went a different direction in May. This is not contingent on the vendor, is that?
Well, it's contingent on us selecting a vendor.
Yes. Which,
If we don't select a vendor, then it's sunk money.
yes, I guess that's the,
And the county will be sunk if we don't pick a vendor at some point. For those that aren't aware,
What's
we're
the sunk
operating
cost?
on 30-year-old technology.
Right.
We have to do something.
Right.
And so if you don't choose to adopt the contract coming up in the next few weeks, we will go through another process to get a vendor to you, because it's a critical process to a
Right.
critical operations of the community.
Yeah.
okay. All right, well, thank you for that presentation. I mean, if the board's pleasure, we can vote on number 3 separately and
I'd like to pull it from the block.
pull it from the block. We can vote on 1, 2, and 4 through 8 as a block, and then vote on 3 separately if you like. Okay, if that's the case, I'll entertain a motion to that effect.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the consent agenda minus item number 3.
It's been moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, nay. Any abstentions? Okay, items 1, 2, and 4 through 8 are approved. The next item, we'll consider item number 3 separately, the authorization for the county administrator to execute a contract amendment with Barry Dunn. Do I have a motion on that?
Mr. Chairman, I move approval of item number 3, but with our county attorney's advice that it be contingent upon the contract signing software signing in May.
Okay, it's been moved.
Is that what you said?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, now a little discussion. So if it's contingent, if the approval is contingent, Ms. McGee, could you give us a little more color on that?
Yes. When I gave you that recommendation, I was not aware that Ms. Horlocker's intention was to do pre-contractual work, aligning her processes and so forth, ready to deal with any incoming financial module software, this contract or anyone in the future. So it is certainly a legally appropriate, but it would not provide, as Ms. Horlocker said to the board only moments ago, just wouldn't provide her the opportunity to do these pre-tasks, get our processes internally straight for whatever new financial module contract we're going to have, get our stakeholders within the county straight. And so it is also appropriate, based on her needs, to go ahead and allow this contract to come into existence with your approval today, with the understanding that she would engage only in, as she has said, pre-contractual work that would be of value whenever, next month or 6 months from now, whenever the county does engage that financial software contract. And she would limit those tasks, and this contract allows her to only have the consultant do whatever tasks she needs at the time. So,
Okay.
if there's anything else I can answer about that, I'd be happy to.
So,
I will
do I?
I will entertain a friendly amendment if you'd like, which in this case.
Would you like to just withdraw that motion and,
There you go. I'll withdraw the motion.
is that
and-
approved
Okay,
by the
motions.
second?
Yes, certainly.
All right.
Second.
The originator and the seconder are both approved withdrawing the motion, so there is no motion on the table. Now I'll entertain another motion on item number 3.
All right. So, Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve item number 3.
Okay, it's been moved. Do we have a second?
Second.
Moved and second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Any abstentions?
Boy.
Wow.
Consent
Item number
items
3 is
getting harder
approved.
and harder.
You can do your prep work, and hopefully all goes well. So thank you for bearing with us on that. It was just a little bit out of the ordinary, so we wanted to give it its full daylight, so thank you.
Very good.
Next item is new business, secondary 6-year plan.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Mr. Badesky, I'm Todd Kilduff, Deputy County Administrator for Community Development and Public Utilities. We have the update presentation for you for the secondary 6-year plan. While Lisa's opening that, Mr. Coleman usually gives the presentation. He's off today, so I'll be doing the presentation. This is my first time presenting the plan to you, so if there's any questions that you may have that I may not be able to answer, I asked Danny Baden with VDOT and Marshall Wynn with VDOT to stick around just to help supplement me. So I appreciate them hanging out for a little bit.
Marshall Wynn didn't hear you.
Oh, did Marshall head out? He left us. Marshall left us. That's okay. We'll survive. We will survive. For those in the public and those at home listening, the secondary 6-year plan is really, it's a plan that we review every single year. And it provides methods for the county to identify any road-related projects and align those with VDOT's secondary 6-year plan funds. So it's a process that, as mentioned, we go through every single year, and we work diligently with VDOT on that to make sure everything is funded appropriately and the priorities are all met. the schedule that we're looking at is today, we're going to show you a few of the updates, some of the prioritized projects. VDOT has updated financial data for us, and we're also asking you to set a public hearing for May, and then obviously May 1st would be the public hearing on the plan itself. There are a few updates, some hot off the press items that I've highlighted and read a little bit later in the slideshow, which differ from the board packet. One of them specifically is a housekeeping item that we just learned from VDOT that they requested that we update it. So when I get to that, you'll see it highlighted in red. So some good news. We'll show you the financial slide a little bit later. Actually, I think it's the last slide in the presentation. But the Commonwealth Transportation Board did add specific funds for us, which we're happy about. We also have 3 projects that were completed this past year. 2 are VDOT related, 1 was developer related. And there's also some more good news. There's 5 projects scheduled for this year, which I'll get into in later slides as well. As with any plan or any project, we always want to make sure we're looking at the cost of the project. So we are always working hand in hand with VDOT to make sure that the projects we've identified and the priorities align with the funding that they have. And they've been very good about keeping us informed on those items. And the second bullet point there lists the future allocations. This is also on the last slide that I mentioned. It's going to outline the next 6 years, showing about $74,000 and change per year in the SSYP budget, more specifically the telefee line item. This is a new item. The last bullet point is we learned that any funds that aren't spent will be rolled into the Smart Scale program. A project update, we're familiar with we're calling it one project, the Fairground Road Extension Project, but it's really 3. It's the intersection, which has been identified to be a roundabout. We call the second project the Exxon Access, but it's really just a stub extension is all it is to the back there and to the county-owned property as well. And also the Fairground Road Extension itself, but you can actually see there's significant improvements to River Road as well in that exhibit. The information, I've been talking to an individual at VDOT called Scott Ragnar. He's been a very nice guy. I've been asking him for updates on the revenue share program. He's still discussing that, which leads us to this slide. The roundabout itself is about $3.6 million. The Exxon Access is about $455,000, and the extension itself is $3.9 million, half of that being borne by the county, the other half by VDOT, and that's what I've been talking to VDOT about, asking for updates on that. We hope to hear something this month, but if not, then we'll let you know as soon as we hear something on that. These are the good news projects. 3 roads were completed. Old Stage Road, about a half mile of road. Mannequin Ferry Road, a little over a mile. And Martin Road, as you see the 2 asterisks there, that was really done by a developer for the Martin Solar project. So they actually did that out of pocket, the $45,000 for the half mile of road. And I'm going to get into Martin Road again in a later slide. I'll explain that a little bit later. But really, the contractor did, or the developer did, the majority of the road, just not all of it. There's a little piece left. So this is pictures of the roads, Old Stage, Mannequin, and Martin. They look really good, and we're very proud of them. The 5 projects scheduled for this year: Soldiers Lodge Road, Pink Dogwood Road, Lee Road, Martin Road, again, the same road. VDOT, it actually wasn't on this list. VDOT said, hey, we do have some money left over. We have about $10,000 to cover the rest of that road. So we're very excited about that. So the entire road will be completed. And there's just a small piece of 3 Chopped Road as well that's been identified. And for those who don't know where those projects are, we have this map here showing Martin, 3 Chopped, Pink Dogwood, Lee Road, and Soldiers Lodge Road. Here are the remaining public gravel roads. I mentioned earlier, highlighting things in red that have changed. Youngstown Road for several years has been a 2-mile road, $130,000. VDOT has a lot of information in their program that lists the actual road length, the unpaved road length, road width, ditches, things. There's a lot of information that they have, and we had always been told that it was a 2-mile road at $130,000. Well, it turns out that was some of the information that they had, but really the truth is half of that road was already paved. So the project is not being cut in half. I mean, it is, but it's only because half of it was already completed. So I just want to be clear on that. It's not like there's still a mile of the road that still needs to be done. Half of the road is already done. That's why you see the reduction there from 2 miles to a little under a mile, and also the price reduction as well. An interesting item, and this is just a hot off the press item that VDOT has informed us of, is Flag Station Road and Youngstown Road. Those are the only two roads on that list that are eligible for the unpaved road money, meaning that they have over 50 vehicles per day traveling on them. The rest do not. So again, it's such new items we just found out today. We are requesting that those be added, or VDOT has requested that we add those as priorities number 10 and 11, which I'll get to on a later slide. They're not even on that slide. So it would be Flag Station Road and Youngstown Road could be added to that list. A few more updates. Patterson Avenue and River Road intersection, it's actually the northbound right turn lane that requires some improvements. We have some good information. We've already contacted Benedictine, who has a bond for this. It's about, if I remember correctly, around $230,000, which would be about half the project budget. VDOT has requested that we contact them and move forward with obtaining that money so they can go ahead and move forward with the project. They already have the preliminary engineering underway, so we've actually already contacted Benedictine. I think we have a meeting scheduled in just a few weeks. The Maidens Road Bridge, another item, is about $130,000, and anything related to bridges is really just bridges. No money from roads can be used for bridges, no bridge money can be used for roads. So it's really a specific funding source. If you have any further questions, I'm sure Danny can speak to the bridge portion a little bit better than I can. But really it's just deck rehabilitation. So the bridge is already there, they just want to rehab what they already own. So here's the priorities. Looks a little different. We've kind of centered it from what was in the agenda packet. But so we have Fairground Road, which we're all familiar with. 5 of the projects to be done this year: Martin Road, Lee Road, Soldiers Lodge, Pink Dogwood, and 3 Chopped. Then just discussed the Patterson Avenue River Road project, the bridge project, and then Hockett Road, number 8. That's been on the list for a while as well. But we're also recommending adding a number 10 and a number 11, which again is Flag Station Road and Youngstown Road. This also differs from the board packet. I apologize I didn't make that red, but this is also new. It actually adds FY 2024 into the slideshow. We actually didn't have that until just yesterday, so this is new information here. So almost the second to last column is FY 2024, which has the telefee money that goes out with the $74,000 and change. But I kept in the FY 2018, so you could see that as well. So again, the next steps, we're going to continue working with VDOT and any updates they have. As you know, just from this presentation, we've had information rolling in Friday and Monday and a little bit more today. We hope to have everything shored up with VDOT in the next few weeks for the public hearing in May. So I'll take any questions if you have them.
Any questions for Mr. Kilduff?
I have one, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Alvarez?
Sure.
Mr. Kilduff, do we have maintenance costs for these roads? I know VDOT sets I guess, a number of cars per day to prioritize, as well as number of residences. Mm-hmm. Do we know what the cost is for maintaining some of these roads? My guess is some are worse than others because of the topography.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think
Does that come into the formula?
Not the actual building of the road, but I think there is ongoing maintenance that VDOT would probably have numbers on if there was a specific, as you said, each road is unique, the geometry and how it looks and the width and so on and so forth. So each one would have its own maintenance item.
Yeah, I'm just wondering
but
if
I
the
don't know.
maintenance cost goes into the priority process. So they might pave one because it's costing more to maintain it with gravel.
Yeah, come on up. Thank you, Danny.
The avoided cost or the
Yeah.
cost savings?
Mr. Chairman, Board, Mr. Badesky, that's a very good question. In terms of the cost, I figure the cost based on the grading that would take to bring the road to a certain standard, just a couple of days of that's manpower. And then I figure in materials, and then all of that is based on the length and the width of the roadway. In terms of maintenance, I do not use that in the suggestion of the priority. We can talk with Marshall now that Marshall's back to see where he would prioritize that. But in terms of the priority, it's really what you saw listed there was what we've already accounted for last year, and then the 2 extra that would be available using the unpaved road money.
Okay. Yeah, just to be clear, I think he's referring to the avoided cost to no longer have to maintain the gravel as opposed to the ongoing forward maintenance of the paved road. Is that?
Oh, I see what you're
In
saying.
other words, the net cost of paving as opposed, you're saving this.
Right.
So on one road, you may be saving an awful lot of maintenance on the gravel, so you'd be saving that. Does that enter into the priority to say, let's pave this one first because we'll get out from under a big cost, or pave that one first, even though it might not be saving us much? Does that factor in at all?
Unfortunately, I don't believe that it works that way. That would be a very good way to think of it, but the people that authorize the money don't seem to talk to us about those particulars. So that's not the way it works. I'm sorry.
Well, you can put that in the suggestion box. But no, thank you for answering the question. It does not currently, and maybe it should, but it doesn't currently. So, okay, thank you. Other questions?
Mr. Chairman, so the proposed 6-year priorities, we've got priority 1 through 9. Yes, 1 through 9. And I believe Mr. Wynn said that these gravel roads would all, hopefully would be done by this fiscal year. So maybe it doesn't matter. But why, does it matter what order that they're in? Like item number 2 is 2 homes, item number 5 is 6 homes. I'm just asking a question. Does it really even matter if we're all going to do them by July 1st?
He mentioned 2 of them were going to be done by July, right?
No, I'm sorry. Let me clarify. The 2 that I was speaking to were the ones that you guys will be voting on in May, I believe. Youngstown and Flag Station at the public hearing.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
Right.
Sorry, the 5 that we were speaking of, that's Martin, Lee Road, Soldiers Lodge, Pink Dogwood, and 3 Chopped. And really, that's kind of a Marshall's means and methods, I guess, wherever that would encompass staging, it would encompass where the material's delivered, things like that. So in that case, it would be up to Marshall or Mark's discretion. But as long as we intend to do all 5 of them in this season, the priority doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. That's my question. Okay, great.
Correct.
Thank you very much. Good answer.
That's right, it is a little bit of a misnomer. It sort of implies that one is more important than the other, but it sounds like it's.
That's,
based on
yeah,
how they're-
so they're all going to get done.
That's right.
Yeah, thanks.
Other questions, thoughts, comments? Okay, thank you very much for that presentation.
Thank you.
I believe you need an authorization from this board to set a public hearing for May
Yes, sir.
1st for the second-year plan. If there's no other questions, I'll go ahead and entertain a motion to go ahead and set that public hearing for May 1st, 2018. This is the first item under new business on our agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I move to set a public hearing for May 1st to discuss the secondary 6-year program.
Okay, it's been moved. Do we have a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Any abstentions? Motion passes unanimously. We have a public hearing set for May 1st.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is appointments, and I believe we do have some appointments for today. Mr. Badesky, would you like to go through the appointments for today?
Mr. Chairman, there's 2 separate boards for consideration today. Under the Board of Building Code Appeals, a reappointment of Jerome Jackson for District 2, Daniel Dottie for District 4, Carter Duke, District 3, Charles Reed Gilly, the 3rd of District 5, all to the Building Code Appeals effective June 1 for a 2-year term. Current terms expire in May 2018. The second for your consideration today is the Capital Area Alcohol Safety Action Program, is a reappointment of Lester Buzz Coe to the Capital Area Alcohol Safety Action Program for a 3-year term effective May 1 through April 30th, 2021.
Mr.
Okay.
Chairman,
Yes,
I
sir.
have a question about one of the appointees for the Board of Building Code Appeals. Mr. Carter Duke has been appointed to the Planning Commission. Can he still serve on the Board of Building Code Appeals?
I haven't reviewed those 2 boards in specifically, but I do believe that he can. Yeah,
Well-
I believe, you checked into that prior to putting it on the agenda, is my understanding.
Well, here, I mean, these are reappointments, so he's currently serving on both. So before he was appointed to the Planning Commission, presumably that would have come up, that he's currently serving on the other board, because this is a reappointment to the Board of Building
Correct.
Code Appeals. He's currently serving on both, I guess.
Yes, and there's no general inability to serve when you're on the Planning Commission. So the only thing I have not checked is the Board of Building Code Appeals, but,
And while that is an appointment, this board hasn't actually met in several years.
All right, well,
Or if we need it.
As
Keep
needed.
the board active if it's needed, but it hasn't been needed in quite a few years.
so at this point, we have no reason to believe there's an issue.
that's correct. My recommendation might be to go ahead and make the appointment. I'll be happy to just double check to
You can
make sure that
verify.
and if there is a problem, then of course, there's always the opportunity to replace him on the Board of Building Code Appeals, which would be what you would do now if there was a problem, I think, having him serve on your Planning Commission. I don't believe there is, but I would recommend go ahead and approving it, and I will
Okay.
advise you that it is acceptable to have him continue.
Good, thank you. Thank you for that, Mr. Alvarez.
So, Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the nominations as read by Mr. Budeski.
For both
For the
boards?
appointments,
We're taking
for
both?
both boards.
We're taking both as a group. Okay, it's been moved that we take them both as a group and approve all the appointments as presented. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Any abstentions? Okay, it's unanimous that those appointments are approved. And I just want to take a moment to thank all of those individuals we just mentioned for all their service to this county, for stepping forward, volunteering their time and energy, and being willing to commit to serve the county. So thank you for that. All right, the next item on our agenda is a closed session, but perhaps before we make a motion to go into closed session, I'm going to propose that this board take a break for about 10 minutes till 20 of, and then reconvene to consider a motion to go into closed session. And just for those in the audience and at home, after we come back and make a motion to go into closed session, that'll be followed by a dinner break, and then pick up again with the evening session at 7 p.m. So the only things left between now and 7 p.m. would be the closed session, followed by a dinner break.
And Mr. Peterson, just to clarify, you would move to go into closed session, and when it's done, you would come back out and certify your closed section as official action before you go to dinner.
Great, okay. So we break first, then move to close, then come out of close, move, and then go to dinner.
All right.
That's a lot, but I think we can handle it. I think we're up to it.
We're going to do it after a
We're
break.
following you.
All right, so at this point, we're just going to take a 10-minute break, and then we'll come back and consider a motion. So 10-minute break, thank you. Make sure that cool section's ready. Is cool section ready?
We're ready.
Ready.
Appreciate it if you give us like 5 minutes advance notice. If you want to talk to this end of the table.
10 minutes advance notice. I told you we're taking a 10-minute break.
We'll see if we can work you in.
You see if you work me in? I'll have my people call your people.
Yeah.
Discipline you guys. Give them some demerits. Write down 2 demerits. Yeah. All right, the break is over. I'd like to reconvene this meeting. Next item on the agenda is to consider a closed meeting. Do we have a motion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, move to convene a closed meeting for the purpose of discussions related to filling the Board of Supervisors vacancy as permitted by Virginia Code 2.2-3711A1 and certification required by Virginia Code 2.2-3712D upon the conclusion of the closed meeting.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Mr. Badesky, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Alvarez.
Yes.
Mr. Minnick.
Yes.
Ms. LaChalette.
Yes.
Mr. Peterson.
Yes. Okay, motion is approved. We will now go into closed session as permitted by state code.
The Goochland County Board of Supervisors hereby certify that to the best of each member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements under the Freedom of Information Act, and only such public matters as were identified in the motion convening the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered by the Goochland County Board of Supervisors in the closed meeting of this date.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Got it moved and seconded. Mr. Badesky, could you roll call vote, please?
Mr. Minnick?
Yes.
Ms. Lachelet?
Yes.
Mr. Alvarez?
Yes?
Mr. Peterson?
Yes. Okay, that certification is passed unanimously. At this point, we are going to take a dinner break, and we'll come back for our 7 p.m. meeting. Thank you. Good evening and welcome. This is the evening session for the Goochland County Board of Supervisors on April 3rd, 2018. I'd like to welcome everybody here in the room and also those that may be watching at home or off-site. The first item on our agenda this evening is a citizen comment period. And this is a time in which any member or any citizen can come forward and address this group on any item of Goochland County business, generally unless it's scheduled for a public hearing tonight, or in this case, the expressions of interest tonight. We'd like to consider those separately at the appropriate time. But for anything other than that, that's Goochland County business, any citizens welcome to come forward and address this group and keep your comments to about 3 minutes. So at this point, I'll go ahead and open up the citizen comment period. 2, 1. All right, seeing none, we'll go ahead and close the citizen comment period. The next item on the agenda for this evening is expression of interest in filing or filling the interim role as a Board of Supervisor member for District 3. As most of you are aware, this board has an obligation to go ahead and fill an opening in District 3. This interim person would serve until the special election, which has been scheduled for November 6th, 2018. And what this board has chosen to do is to open this process up and make it much more transparent and solicit interest from citizens that might want to participate in the process. Now, the indications of interest should come from citizens that are residents of District 3. There was a formal cutoff for applications yesterday, April 2nd, so the formal applications have already been submitted. But at the 3 o'clock meeting this afternoon and the 7 o'clock meeting this evening, this board, again, with a view toward being open and transparent, has invited any citizen from District 3 to come forward and express their interest in the microphone at an open public session. So at this point, without further ado, I'll go ahead and open up the expression of interest portion of this evening's meeting. Anyone that would like to come forward and express interest in the position of District 3, now would be the right time. Please.
I've written a short statement, if that's okay.
Sure. As you come forward, what I would ask is, I would ask that you, to the microphone, I would just ask that you please read your name and address for the record into the microphone and limit your comments to about 3 minutes or so.
It'll be pretty short, yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you much.
So,
Name and address would be?
Charles Lida, 2442 Settlebrook Drive.
Great, Charles. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Let me pull up this address. Good evening, Board of Supervisors and those assembled. My name is Charles Lida, and I stand before you tonight with the intent to express my interest in Mr. Creasy's vacant seat. His loss has been a significant one for this community and for this board, as I have heard. I've also heard that his strong sense of morality was a great guidance for this county, and that his passion for serving Goochland was enormous. I hope from the bottom of my heart that the person this board ultimately selects will prove to be even half as great an asset to Goochland County as he was. Moving on. Serving the community has been a passion of mine for some time, and something I have pursued and attained leadership roles in. At the University of Virginia, I was honored to serve as the president of the Native American Student Union, being a tribally enrolled Native American myself, a role in which I represented the interests and causes of Native students and people both on grounds and in the Charlottesville community. I spent a significant amount of time during my year as president planning and hosting Native American community events with my fellow executive board members and representing Native students and culture in general to UVA's administration, student body, student government, and Charlottesville at large. I was also honored to serve as a voting member both of the Minority Rights Coalition at UVA's executive board and of UVA's presidential senate, deliberating and making large decisions with the presidents and vice presidents of all of UVA's major student organizations, as well as UVA's college administration that affected UVA's entire student population. I am certainly still a fresh UVA graduate, granted, but I am absolutely not a stranger to serving on a board, working hard as a team member, fielding complaints and concerns, being a leader, or trying to represent and help my community. As I study for my law entrance exam and contemplate a possible career in public interest law, it is as clear as day to me that serving my community has been and will always be one of my greatest pursuits, responsibilities, and goals. Having put forth all of this to your board and the public in attendance, I hope you will contemplate my words and consider me for the temporary position on your board. I can promise that nothing less than my greatest effort would be applied in every facet of the position. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Charles. Anyone else like to come forward? And again, I'll just remind, please, your name and address for the record.
Mr. Chairman, Board, Mr. Badusky, I'm Sean Creasy, my address 2190 Denver Lane. I've been a resident in Goochland County for 40-plus years and a resident in District 3 for about 27 years. Most of my time here in Goochland, it has been towards public service. I'd like to see that whoever does get selected for this to continue in the same mind frame and same passion that my father had and same direction that the board is continually going in. I'm available. I trust you all will make the right decision on whoever you choose, and good luck to that. Okay?
Hey, thank you, Sean. Anyone else like to come forward? All right, 3, 2, 1. All right, seeing none, we'll go ahead and close the expression of interest. Thank you for those that came forward. I appreciate your willingness to step forward and participate in the process. For those that may or may not be aware, under state code, this board is obligated to fill that position, at least on an interim basis, no later than April 24th. So our decision will be made before then. Okay, the next item is our public hearings. I believe we have 6 public hearings scheduled for this evening, most, if not all of which, revolve around the budget and the tax rates and so forth. Okay, so I'll ask Finance Director Barbara Hollacker to come forward and start walking us through the first public hearing.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. You see 6 items listed on your agenda. We are going to actually combine that into 4 separate public hearings. So the first public hearing will be on item 2693. The second will be on 2694. And then we will have 1 public hearing on 2695, 2669, 2670. And then the 4th public hearing will be 2665, and that will be introduced by Ms. McGee. Okay, so first public hearing tonight will be to consider the proposed 2018 real estate tax rate. As you are aware, we advertised at least 30 days ago the effective tax rate. The effective tax rate due to the 3% assessment increase, is actually 51 cents. But this budget, proposed budget, is built on a tax rate of 53 cents. So we are, have advertised a tax rate of 53 cents. You are at the April 17th going to adopt the tax rate, and at that time you can adopt the tax rate of 53 cents or a lower tax rate at that time. And so, next.
So that was the presentation on item number 1? Okay. Board, any questions?
Not yet.
Not yet? Okay.
With you so far.
Okay. At this point, I will open this, this item up to a public hearing. That means anyone that would like to come forward and speak either in favor or opposed, or just make comments on the proposed tax rate, now would be the time to come forward. 2, 1. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close that public hearing. Next item.
So the second public hearing tonight will be to consider the proposed 2018 TCSD ad valorem tax rate. And the ad valorem tax rate of the TCSD Tuckahoe Creek Service District is proposed to stay the same at 32 cents per $100 of assessed value. And that's my presentation on that.
Short and sweet. Okay, so the proposal is for no change in the TCSD tax rate. Any questions for Barbara on that one? No, seeing none. We'll go ahead and open it up for a public hearing. Anyone that would like to come forward and speak to the Tuckahoe Creek Service District ad valorem tax, now would be the time. Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Thank you. Next item.
Mr. Chairman, just to
Yes, sir.
confirm with the county attorney, I believe our next items were scheduled for 7:15.
So
So
we
we
take a
got
3-minute break.
Yes.
All right. For those that aren't aware, under the current code, the next item on the agenda is not allowed to start until 7:15. So we've got about 2.5 minutes to commune with your neighbor and tell jokes or catch up on things. Yeah, the no, I'm not going to open the microphone to jokes. That would not be such a great idea. Anything you do for your announcements? I can tell them. Well, we're going to try and fill some of the dead time here with a couple of announcements. As you all know, we did just finish our spring town hall meetings. And during those town hall meetings, it's one of our best opportunities to engage with citizens and get feedback in the spring town halls for the budget, which we're going through tonight. I want to thank everybody that turned out for those town hall meetings. We got a lot of meaningful feedback. Some of the feedback that we got this year was an emphasis on public safety, particularly when it comes to the schools and our children. And we were fortunate to have at those town hall meetings members of our public safety, the sheriff's department, and the school administration. And what they did was share some of the things that we are currently doing to ensure the safety of our school-aged children, but also some of the considerations that they're weighing for possible additional actions to make sure that our children stay safe going forward. That seemed to be one of the topics this year that was very important. And then, Mr. Badesky, I don't know if you wanted to add anything on the town halls and how that went, but that continues to be one of our best avenues for engagement and feedback. So thank you for those that attended, and I encourage you to attend in the future. Do you have anything to add to that?
Mr. Chairman, I had shared at the 3 o'clock that opportunity is always an opportunity for staff to engage with our residents in a different manner. When you come to these public hearings, they're time limited and somewhat directed towards the topic at hand. At the town halls, we open the floor, so to speak, and allow topics of very diverse array to be shared, and we always promise the folks that turn out that we're going to get them an answer that night or shortly thereafter if we're unable to answer it. This community turns out very well for those events. And there is a high level of engagement here in Goochland, and that makes us do a better job for our residents. And so we really value that opportunity to engage and just appreciate doing those in the spring and fall. This one was a little more budget-centric, but received really good feedback. The last thing I will, if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman, just read into the record that I'd shared at the earlier meeting. On April 24th at 4 p.m., the Virginia Department of Transportation Commonwealth Transportation Board will have a meeting in Colonial Heights. We'll promote this more through county public information channels to receive comments on the 6-year improvement program. This program for us is extremely important. There are a number of critical projects in our community. We have failing intersections, unsafe areas of our community that while we have some projects within the plans, they're not necessarily prioritized as quickly as we would like them. To have our residents and political support at those meetings goes a very long way to potentially seeing those projects moved up on the list. And so any residents that have an interest in supporting that, we will be developing some talking points and encourage folks to assist and join that meeting. That's all I have.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Podesky. 3, 2, 1. Okay, we made the 7:15 cutoff so we can pick up where we left off. Ms. Horlacher?
So on your agenda, the items 3, 4, and 5 will be the next public hearing. So we will now have a public hearing on the FY19 proposed total county budget, the 5-year capital improvement, it should be the 25-year capital improvement, the 2018 tax rates and related ordinance changes. The proposed budget was presented in February, and this is a high-level summary of all the different functional areas within the budget. Total of all funds budget is $89,381,599. And the revenue that supports all that is, of course, predominantly property taxes, followed by our state revenue and personal property taxes. There's some proposed changes to fees in this budget. The second one actually is a reduction of a deferral fee from $750 to $250, and you can see how it fits better into the mid-range of our of local communities around us. And we are also proposing that we add fees for fire rescue vehicles and personnel at special events. At this time, I'm going to review the amendments that have come up during the budget process. No action is required on those today, and they'll be incorporated into the final numbers on the night of April 17th. So one of the amendments would have a no effect on the total recommended budget, and that would be to reallocate $263,000 from what we call the countywide or fund to the individual departments for the 2% merit increases for all county and constitutional officer employees, including the Department of Social Services. Another amendment that would have no effect on the total recommended budget would be to reallocate $129,000 from the countywide budget to individual departments for the year 2 second phase of the benchmark adjustments.
Ms. Horlacher, just to clarify, that's 121?
Oh, I'm sorry. 121,000. The third amendment, which also would have no effect on the total budget, would be to substitute proffers as a source of revenue to fund the purchase of land to replace Fire Station Number 2. That was planned for FY19, and we saw that we had some unspent proffer money that we could utilize rather than using some reserves. So that would have no total effect on the budget. And the last one would increase in technical error. We forgot to budget some debt service in the utility fund. So it's a $397,475 increase in debt service in the utility CIP, which is going to be funded by connection fees. All the tax rate proposals remain unchanged. There are no proposed changes to any of the tax rates. And all our tax rates are shown on the next several slides. And of course, you approved the proposed FY19 to 43 capital improvement program. You approved that in January, and we will, on the 17th, go through a reapproval of that, just to focus on FY19 today, because that's the year that you will appropriate the funds for. That's a high-level summary of our projects in FY19 and the revenues that support those projects. And that's a summary of the largest of the projects being a transportation project or the Fairgrounds Road extension. The utility rates are proposed to increase water by 5% and wastewater by 6%, and breaking it down by total bi-monthly bill, it would be an average increase on residential customers of $5.20 on a bi-monthly basis. So that sums up those three different parts of that public hearing, and that concludes my part of the presentation. Are there any questions?
Any questions for Ms. Orlacher? Okay, no questions, thank you. We can do a public hearing for all three at the same time, or we have to do separate public hearings?
You may do one public hearing for all three items.
Okay, super, thank you. Okay, at this point, I will open it up for public comment on each of the three items that you just heard as one public hearing. Anyone who would like to come forward and speak about the budgets, the CIP, tax rates? Thank you. Again, just please state your name and address for the record.
Absolutely. Good evening. My name is Kevin Rudnick. I am here representing Feedmore, and I do have a few handouts that I would like to pass out to you all, please.
Thank you. Please give those to the clerk, and she can make sure that we get them all the way at the end. Thank you.
So I wanted to come in tonight to share with the board a little bit about Feedmore and how we are investing the allocation that we have very generously been receiving over the past many years. And first and foremost, thank you to all of you that have participated and supported us in our projects over the years, particularly Supervisor Lascolette, who is a very regular volunteer for our Meals on Wheels program here in Goochland County. So thank you for that. So Feedmore, we are located, our administrative offices, our warehouse, and our kitchen in Richmond, Virginia. And it's not widely known, our scope and our reach of service. And we provide programs for the Central Virginia region, including 34 counties and cities, which are highlighted in the maps included in that handout there, which covers a wide area, including the county of Goochland. And our mission is to fight hunger in Central Virginia. And we are doing that through a vast array of programs targeted at children, targeted at senior population, and targeted at the family unit as a whole. And the type of individuals and families we're serving, this is hunger that it's a different kind of hunger than we might think of. It's not starvation. It's not folks not having anything to eat. It's more of a lack of 3 meals a day. It's unhealthy diets. It's folks who might not have easy access to a grocery store. It's working families, so it's the working poor. It's families who just need a little bit of extra help, maybe 1 to 10 meals extra a month from our programs. Those are the types of folks that we're serving. And here in Goochland County, it is blessed with a lower food insecurity rate than many of the other counties we serve, so that is very positive for this county. It's at a 7.8% rate, which is significantly lower than our regional average at about 13% of folks who are experiencing food insecurity. But that still leaves an estimated 1,700 residents of Goochland County who do struggle knowing where their next meal will come from. So those are the folks that we are targeting and attempting to serve. Interesting tidbit is actually 50% of those 1,700 folks within the county are actually above the poverty rate to receive SNAP benefits. So they are gainfully employed, just struggling financially, temporarily generally are the kind of families that we're serving. Generally, a family is only receiving food from us for about 7 months out of the year, and then they move on because they're able to get their finances back in order. Specifically, the programs that we offer here in Goochland County and that we allocate the money that we receive from Goochland County is we distribute food to local food pantries. So we have the big warehouse in Richmond where the local food pantries from Goochland County are able to withdraw food from that warehouse. And you see listed there the 5 agencies that we work with here in Goochland County. Most significantly, of course, Goochland Cares with that food pantry there. They receive a percentage of their food, a portion of their food from our warehouse. Mount Olive Baptist Church, St. Matthew's United Methodist, Harvest Food Pantry at Victory Christian and Antioch Baptist are all receiving food from our program. And then, of course, our Meals on Wheels program, which we operate out of Grace Episcopal. We delivered about 3,000, a little bit more than 3,000 meals last year to residents just here in Goochland County. Overall, last year, with our allocation and with other resources we're able to receive through donors, we provided 366,000 meals to residents just here in Goochland County. You can see some return on investment there with our allocation. Over the course of 1 year, we were able to provide over $750,000 of services to residents of Goochland County. A very significant return on that investment there. I included a picture of Mr. Budesky came and joined us last month for our March for Meals, which is a Meals on Wheels awareness campaign, so thank you for that. And one fun event we had a couple years ago, which Supervisor Alvarez, you joined us for, we completely renovated the Harvest Food Pantry at Victory Christian Church through our relationship with Food Lion. They came in and did a pantry makeover, which was a lot of fun. They bought them 3 new refrigerators and freezers for their food pantry and for them to be able to store fresh produce and fresh meats. Completely renovated their food pantry with a fresh paint job, new flooring, and new shelving, which really brought life to those folks over there. It was great to see. Also, I'll end on the allocation is much appreciated, and it helps us pay for our operations, but even more than just the money itself, the allocation, it speaks to the county's trust in our organization, which allows us to leverage your support to gain support to help balance the rest of the expenses. So having the county invest in us allows us to go to corporate donors and civic groups and have that behind us and say the county supports us, so please support us as well. So I appreciate that. Thank you so much for giving me the time. And unless there's any questions, I will leave it at that.
Well, thank you very much for that presentation. You weren't here this afternoon at the 3 o'clock meeting, but we did approve a proclamation recognizing April 22nd to April 28th as Hunger Awareness Week in Goochland. So
Well, very good.
Somewhat of a timely presentation. So
Well, absolutely. I'll stay in touch with your office, Mr. Budesky, see if there's something fun and awareness built that we can support the efforts on that as well.
Right. Well, thank you for all you do to ease the pain and suffering and on the hunger front in Goochland County. Really appreciate that.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
You too. Anyone else like to come forward and speak to the 3 items on the budget this evening? Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing. And we've got one more item.
Members of the board, excuse me, this item is broken out separately, but because it does not have to do with this budget for this year at all. What it is instead is that we were planning and timing your budget public hearings. We realized that the county ordinance establishing the TCSD district, the service district for the Tuckahoe Creek Service District, has a statement in it requiring that you hold its public hearing separate from the budget public hearing. And while neither Mr. Budesky nor I were here when this was adopted, we thought perhaps that was originally designed because we had a lot of public input, it would be a lot to take in the same evening or the same public hearing. But we feel, given what we've seen over the past several years, and heard about over the past several years, that it's not necessary at this time that that rate be set at a completely separate public hearing. And so the item before you tonight is simply to strike the language in today's county ordinance that says that hearing must be separate. And the only change that would occur, say, in next year, is that you would be able to hear from Ms. Horlocker on all of the, excuse me, 4 items. You would have the 3 you just had, plus this rate. And again, the same citizens who might be interested in the tax rate that we feel are coming to the same meeting, simply make it more convenient for your hearing. It's brought for your consideration this evening.
Okay, thank you for that. Questions for Ms. McGee? Just to clarify, this evening, we're having a public hearing on this, but not making the decision. That would be...
You're welcome to do it either way,
So
whichever
no-
the board prefers.
The other items, there is a requirement to do a public hearing and then approval at a later date,
Those are, yes, this is a regular ordinance amendment.
but this is a regular one.
But you've already held your public hearing on this for this year. That happened at 7 o'clock tonight, so it will have no effect for this year.
Yes.
So you may do whichever you prefer.
Ordinance amendment wouldn't affect this year's budget cycle.
No.
But we could take action on this amendment this evening
Yes, you are legally entitled to.
rather than take action at a future date.
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, wanted to clarify that. Thank you. All right, board, so we could take action on this tonight if we felt it was the right thing to do. Any other questions for Ms. McGee before we open up the public hearing? Okay. We'll go ahead and open up a public hearing on the 6th item, the ordinance amendment for the Tuckahoe Creek Service District to remove the provision to have separate public hearings from the county budget. Bless you.
Thank you.
Anyone who would like to come forward and speak in favor, against, or make comments on this, now would be the time. Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing. Board, what's your pleasure on this?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion.
Yeah, if we're ready.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
I move we amend the Tuckahoe Creek Service District section in code to remove the provision requiring that the ad valorem tax rate public hearing be held separately from the county's budget public hearing.
Okay, it's been moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Mr. Badesky, roll call vote, please.
Mr. Alvarez?
Yes.
Ms. Lachelette?
Yes.
Mr. Minnick?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes. Okay, the ayes have it. It's unanimous that ordinance amendment is approved. Is there any other business to come before the body this evening? Seeing none, this board will adjourn to Tuesday, April 17th at 2018 at 6 p.m. For a closed meeting, followed by a 7 p.m. Regularly scheduled meeting to consider the budget adoption and other public hearings. So without objection, this meeting is adjourned.